for the great enthusiasm you're showing. But now we also have a great opportunity to have another wonderful, outstanding potential candidate for President of the United States. This man is also a tremendous national leader, a great friend, great family man. His whole family, as you know, is dedicated to public service, loves their nation, has given up so much of their time and effort to serve our country, and we're very grateful for that. And of course, this man is also from one of our largest states in the nation, with one of the largest revenue streams, one of our largest population streams, and frankly, one of our largest vote-getting areas of our nation. So we are very thrilled to have Governor Jeb Bush join us this morning. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about him. Now, Governor Jeb Bush, you think of Florida, and of course we have a Republican governor there now, but you think of Florida and you think, well, it's a conservative state. But the fact is that Governor Bush was the third Republican to be elected governor of Florida. Think about that. And then he was the first Republican to be re-elected governor of Florida, which is just a little interesting tidbit about Florida itself. You know, Republicans like to talk about, and we believe in, a conservative principle of smaller, limited government. We believe in making government more efficient, more effective, more accountable, and Governor Bush has done that in his state of Florida when he was governor there. He stuck true to his conservative principles in office throughout his 2 terms in office, and here's why. He cut nearly $20 billion in taxes in his state, large amount of money. He also vetoed more than $2.3 billion in earmarks, something we could use in Washington, D.C. when people start talking about earmarks. He also reduced the state government workforce, the state government employees on state government payroll by 13,000 people. In a large state like that, that's a lot of people. So we appreciate that, making government more efficient, more effective. Republicans also believe in certainly lifting people up, helping them find great opportunities and great jobs, and Governor Bush was all about that too. He helped unleash one of the most robust and dynamic economies in the state of Florida, in the nation, in fact, creating 1.3 million new jobs in the state of Florida when he was governor, and improving the state's credit rating, and by achieving their first ever AAA bond rating for the state of Florida, which speaks very highly about the fiscal management that he put into place in his state. During his 2 terms as governor, Governor Bush also championed major government reform in areas ranging from health care to environmental protection to civil service and certainly even tax reform. And of course, one of his biggest priorities as one of the leading governors of a large state in the United States was to focus on our children's future and giving them a good quality education and adding more accountability and transparency in our education system. And that is probably one of his biggest legacies that he was able to leave the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, he put more accountability in public schools. He created a very ambitious choice program for students so they would have the ability to choose schools. And of course, he held schools accountable. He put in a grading system of A through F, so we know how schools perform, something that we also did here in Oklahoma. He also insisted that children be able to read by the 3rd grade and end social promotion, something else that we think is important here in Oklahoma, so children can be successful as they continue through their years in high school. And I mentioned school choice also. And he continues, even to this day, to be a national leader, a national thought person when it comes to education and reform and how to give our children a better future. Now, certainly he's left office. He was governor from 1999 to 2007. So Jeb returned back to the private sector. He actually knows what it's like to sign a paycheck. It's not a government paycheck. It is a paycheck from his businesses that he runs. He's been, of course, a successful entrepreneur and a businessman. But he's continued to devote his time, his effort, his passion to building a stronger, more vibrant America, certainly the future of our children and our nation. And he is now serving as chairman of one of the nation's leading conservative education reform organizations called the Foundation of Excellence in Education. It's a nonprofit that works with state leaders like ourselves here in Oklahoma and others across the nation in helping provide great policy ideas and how we can implement reforms in our individual states to raise student achievement, which is very important. In 2013, Jeb authored a book called Immigration Wars, Forging an American Solution, along with leading constitutional litigator Clint Bolick, outlining a conservative reform agenda for our immigration system. So, as you can tell, Governor Bush has certainly had a wide range of top-level leadership, passion, dedication, creating jobs, cutting taxes, limited government reform, focusing on our children's future, and certainly comes from a wonderful long line of heritage of public service from his family. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big Oklahoma welcome to Governor Jeb Bush.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Governor. It's great to be introduced by a governor who's probably got an 80% approval rating. You all in Oklahoma I know you're proud of her, and you should be, because Oklahoma's in its ascendancy. When you apply conservative principles the right way at the state level, you can kind of begin to get a sense what it could like if you did the same thing in Washington, D.C. Cutting taxes rather than raising taxes, spending less through government but creating more personal income, reforming the things that are important for the sustainability of communities. And your governor here, Governor Fallon, has done exactly that, and I'm proud to call her a friend, and what an honor that she's introduced me here today. I am delighted to be here. I've been going to these conferences for a long while. I think I went to the first one in New Orleans, and I'm glad that it's in Oklahoma City. You all know me, you know me as George and Barbara's boy. At least if you haven't, then I don't know where you've been. And W's brother. And I'm proud of my family, I really am. I love my mom and dad. I'm so blessed to be their son. And I'm proud of my brother. He is a spectacular brother. But I have enough self-awareness to know that if I'm going to go beyond the consideration of running to be an actual candidate, I'm going to have to share my heart, tell my life story, talk about the ideas that I believe will allow Americans to rise up, and to describe my leadership experience. So I'm going to give you a little taste of that today, if you don't mind. I was born in Midland, Texas, and proud of it. Grew up in Houston, and a couple of Midlanders here. But my life changed when I was 17 years old. I don't know, sometimes when I say this, I can tell that the women kind of get this a little better than the men. But I was 17 years old in León, Mexico, and I met a woman, didn't get to talk to her, I just saw her, and I fell in love at first sight. Anybody have that happen to you? It's pretty wild. I couldn't sleep. I lost 20 pounds, and back then I was a string bean to start with, and my whole life was transformed figuring out first, how could I convince my beautiful Columba to be my wife, and how could how could we move forward together? She finally figured out, her first comment to me was, "You're too tall," because she's kind of 5 foot tall, but she finally got convinced, and I got married 10 days after I turned 21. My wife was 20. We got married at the University of Texas Catholic Center. And we've been married 41 years, and she is the purpose of my life, and I'm proud of her. I got out of the University of Texas in 2.5 years because of her. I've worked my entire adult life, never taking more than a week off because of her. And because of her, I have 3 spectacular children that I'm really proud of. Jeb Jr. and Sandra live in Miami. I recommend that highly to have grandchildren, which we have 2 granddaughters in the same zip code. If you can organize your life that way, life is pretty good. My daughter Noelle is the love of my life, and she lives in Orlando. And my son George P. and Mandy live in Texas, where he is the land commissioner of the state of Texas. And they have 2 kids as well, 2 boys. Jack is the latest, and he's 1 month old. I think about a lot the future through the eyes of my grandchildren a lot these days, and I think we're in a time of incredible possibilities, but we also have huge problems we need to begin to fix so that their future and their prospects are going to be as bright as what we have today. George did something else that's a little different. and I'm proud of him for it. At the age of 30, he enlisted in the Navy Reserves. He was a naval intelligence officer. He served in Afghanistan, and I'm proud of his service, and I'm proud of the service of the men and women in military and uniform that have consistently kept us free. In 1981, after working in the Reagan-Bush campaign, now that was a good campaign, I moved from Houston to Miami, Florida, where we started out our two kids and soon-to-be third kid. We lived there. And I did something a little unusual for people that are thinking about running for public office in Washington, D.C. I learned how to sign the front side of a paycheck. I started a business that had 3 people, and through trial and error, it grew to be the largest commercial real estate company in South Florida. That has more value than people in Washington understand. The greatness of our country doesn't reside in D.C. and all of the alphabet soup regulatory agencies or in the top-down driven approach that the progressive liberals give us. The greatness of our country is when people freely pursue their dreams as they see fit, and through trial and error they figure it out, and they create more opportunities and more prosperity for other people, and then they do the same thing. That's the America that has created the most prosperous country on the face of the earth. That's the America that typically leads the world in human discoveries, in the sciences, in innovation, in the embrace of technology. Not fearing the unknown and unforeseen, but embracing it. Embracing the dynamic solutions that are there for our taking. Understanding through a practical experience of being in business shouldn't be discounted, because we see when people have no experience in anything other than in government, we see what the result is. Under this administration, we know what it is, and it's devastating. And I applied that practical experience of living life as a small business person as governor of the state. Now, Florida is not a red state per se, although we overperform there, thankfully. It's not a blue state. It's what you call a purple state. Not just the 2000 election, but in general, there's 500,000 more Democrats there. And I got to apply conservative principles. I got elected saying what I was going to do, and then I did what I said I was going to do. And I applied conservative principles across the board, and the state is better off because of it. In Washington, over the last 6 years, President Obama has raised taxes $1 trillion to fund the most convoluted healthcare insurance system ever devised. Rube Goldberg must be proud of it, Obamacare, and then added another $600 billion over the next 10 years to boot. Compare that to Florida, where we cut taxes during my 8 years every year, totaling $19 billion. Remember, we don't have an income tax to cut, so we had to be pretty creative to find the tax cuts that would allow more freedom to exist in our state. In Washington, under this president and this administration, we've now reached $18 trillion of debt. In the last 6 years, it's almost doubled. A tragedy that plays out in proportions that we don't really realize today, but it'll play out over the next decades in a very dangerous way. And because of that, in Washington, D.C., for the first time in American history, our national government's credit rating went from AAA to AA. Compare that to the 8 years that I was governor of this purple state that I love, Florida. We increased reserves from $1 billion to $10 billion. We reduced the state government workforce by more than 10%, by 13,000 state workers. We reformed the career civil service system, where you can actually fire someone for sheer incompetence. Many states you can't do that. They called me a lot of things when I was governor. The liberals particularly called me things I can't repeat here because this looks like a PG and G-rated audience. But they called me something I was quite proud of. They called me Veto Corleone. The legislature did. Because I vetoed 2,300 separate line items in the budget, totaling more than $2 billion, not because it was to be punitive. In fact, I was an equal opportunity vetoer. I vetoed Republican projects just like I vetoed Democrat projects that did not go through a sound, prudent system of review. We limited government the old-fashioned way by doing it each and every day. This is a struggle. Government will grow if you don't keep your eyes on the ball. And in Florida, personal income growth was always higher than government growth. And that's the way it should be in Washington, D.C. We can't have a government that we can't afford, and we've allowed it to grow far faster than it was. In the last 6 years, we've had an incredible, and by the way, we're the only state to go from AA to AAA. The credit rating of Florida is higher than that of the national government because conservative principles do work compared to what's going on in Washington. Under the president, our economic recovery has been tepid. In fact, the worst recovery in modern history. We're growing at a 2% rate. Disposable income is down for the great middle. There are more than 5 million people more in poverty, in spite of the fact that we've piled on transfer payments of all sorts of social programs, but the dependency now is higher than it was when President Obama took office. Household median income, for the first time in American history, is down in a recovery. It's $2,100 down per family. Compare that to Florida, where my 8 years we grew the economy to the extent that instead of decreasing jobs, we had 1.3 million net new jobs created, more than any state in the country other than California. By the way, more than Texas, my native-born state. Governor Perry would have to admit it if he was here. I think he already left. And the simple fact is that personal income grew at 4.5%. There is a path out of the mess we have in Washington, D.C. It requires two things: an adherence to conservative principles and leadership. Having people that have practical experience that have done this in adverse circumstances is important. We can't just be talking about these things anymore. We actually have to start fixing them, or we're going to be in decline. Or our children and grandchildren won't have the opportunities that we have. I did other things as governor that didn't just relate to the budget and the economy, although I'm proud of that for sure. We also made sure that the Second Amendment was as important as all the other amendments of our Bill of Rights. And we passed gun law after gun law to protect the Second Amendment. And I was proud of the fact that every year I got an A+ rating from the NRA. You might be able to see the tire marks on my forehead here. I took on the trial bar, and we more or less won. We took on the public unions, and we won. We took on the teachers' unions, and we won. We took on a broken workers' compensation system, and we won, and we saved small businesses $400 million in return for that. That's why we had the 1.3 million net new jobs created. And I'm proud of this record, and I believe that there's a direct role for the next President of the United States to apply the kind of principles that we applied in Florida to Washington, D.C. But one of the things that we need to do, because we're never going to create high sustained growth where more people have a chance at earned success, and that should be the mission for conservatives going forward, to lift our spirits. People's income has to rise. People have the sense that they can rise out of poverty. The middle needs to have growing income. We also have to create a safe and secure world. And in this case, in this administration, this is the first administration in the post-World War II era that does not believe America's presence in the world, America's leadership in the world, America's power is a force for good, a force for security, a force for peace. With all due respect, Mr. President, you're just wrong on this one. You're totally wrong. America's force, leading from behind, is not a foreign policy. Think about it. As ISIS continues its march to create a caliphate, taking over Ramadi, growing in its influence in Syria, and also spawning other forms of Islamic terrorism, not just in Iraq and Syria, but around the world, leading from behind is not a policy. In fact, I would say we now see what happens when we lead from behind. We leave behind our credibility. We leave behind our blood and treasure. We leave behind security. We leave behind peace. If we're going to be serious to create prosperity at home, we need to re-engage with the rest of the world. We have to do it in a way that is the tried and true way. The way that people know around the world, that our friends know that we're not just here this week or next, that we're in it for the long haul, and our enemies need to twitch a little bit. They need to fear us a little bit. That's how you bring security and peace in the world. And that starts with rebuilding a military that needs to be the greatest fighting force each and every day, supporting the men and women in uniform and providing them the best training and the best tools to make sure that we have peace through strength. It is not a cliche. It is an effective foreign policy that has created security for us and for security around the world. It also means that we have to stop offending and rupturing the relationships, the alliances, and the friendships around the world that do create a more peaceful world. Let's start with Israel, for example, to restore that relationship, the most important relationship we have in the Middle East. For crying out loud, we've managed to offend our largest trading partner, our strongest ally, our closest country to our values and our beliefs, Canada. It's hard to do that, I imagine, but this president and this administration has done just that. Our neighborhood feels like they're neglected. Europe wonders where the United States is as Putin emerges as a forceful force against democracy in the region. The Europeans think we pivoted to Asia. If you talk to people in Asia, they wonder, what the heck, where's this pivot? The whole world is wondering where the United States is, so first and foremost, the next president needs to establish the personal relationships and the country-by-country relationships to know that the United States is going to be there over the long haul. So a strong military, a strong foreign policy is part of this, but we also have to protect the homeland. I concur. I just heard Chris Christie's remarks as it relates to the Patriot Act. I totally agree with him and many Republicans that it ought to be reauthorized to keep us safe. There is ample evidence that the Patriot Act has been a tool to keep us safe. Ample evidence, case by case where it has. There is no evidence of anyone's civil liberties being violated because of it. If we want to create a more peaceful world, we need to protect the homeland. These new asymmetric threats don't know boundaries. They use the internet. They recruit people that are in our midst. And it's important for us to protect our freedoms for sure, but it's also important for us to protect the homeland. And so reauthorizing the Patriot Act is definitely part of a comprehensive strategy for foreign policy. The final thing I would say is that American values, security needs to be our first obligation around the world for sure. But American values are important as well. If not us, who? Should be the question that we ask from time to time. If not us, who is going to take care of the persecuted Christians in Iraq, being one of the longest Christian communities ever in existence? If not us, who will take care of the Christians in Kenya who were wiped out in a university? If not us, who is going to take care of the Coptic Christians, 19 of which were beheaded on the shores of Benghazi? If not us, who is going to stand on behalf of Jews in Europe? We have to stand on our values as well. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth because our values of freedom truly matter. And we should stand on them and not ignore the travesty that is taking place all across this world. And by the way, there's a possible candidate on the Democratic side that is thinking or is running for president, although she doesn't interact too much with the press or we don't get a lot of insights into her campaign yet. But she's running and she'll be a formidable force. One thing she can't say is that I was a Secretary of State during a time when there was an effective foreign policy. She can't say that because she was right there with Barack Obama. I honestly believe that if we fix a few big things, how we regulate, how we tax, embrace the energy revolution in our midst, fix a broken immigration system that now creates demands on society rather than making a contribution for high growth, fix our entitlement system, that we could grow at 4% per year, not the 2% per year that's the new normal. And if we did that, the middle would rise and people would come out of poverty and we would be much more hopeful and optimistic about the future. I know we can do this with the proper amount of leadership. But one of the things I think is important for conservatives is to also recognize that we have to win. It's not just about talking about these things. We have to win. And how do we win? Here's how I know we won't win. We won't win if we constantly talk about how bad things are. We won't win if we just focus exclusively on how bad things are because of our opponents. It's fine. In fact, it's principled to stand against Obamacare and the Dodd-Frank and the higher taxes and the corruption of the IRS. All of that is fair game. In fact, I think it's important to do. But we also have to offer a hopeful, optimistic message that's grounded in the principles that we love and that we believe in. We should be confident in those principles. We should embrace them, and we should convince people that haven't heard the message in a long, long while. I think we need to get beyond preaching to the choir, to be honest with you, although I love the choir, don't get me wrong, to get outside of our comfort zone. Go campaign in the Latino barrios across this country. Go to the college campuses that haven't heard a conservative in a long while. Go to the black churches and talk about school choice. Go out and spread the message that is hopeful and optimistic about the future of this country. Let me conclude with this. I was blessed to be governor of the state of Florida, and I got to change a lot of big things. The one I'm most proud of is education. Education reform happens at the state level, not in Washington, D.C. In fact, I would suggest Washington has nothing to do with all the good things that can happen at the local and state level. Washington should not mandate directly or indirectly content, curriculum, or standards. We should push it aside. But frankly, that doesn't mean we should just passively sit back and watch 13,000 unionized, government-run monopolies and expect them to change overnight. Monopolies don't go quietly into the night. I know that firsthand. The other tara mark on my forehead is the fight that we fought to open up our system and to reform it. And I think it's important as conservatives because the people that languish in our current system are those typically in poverty and those that want to rise up but can't because they don't have the tools to achieve earned success. So in Florida, we created the first statewide voucher program. We eliminated social promotion in third grade, this insidious policy that says a functionally illiterate child should go on to fourth grade, as though that isn't a big deal. We created school choice programs for learning disabled kids. 30,000 kids now take public and state monies, dollar for dollar, to go to private schools. We have the largest corporate tax scholarship program in the country. 70,000 kids go to private schools of their choice, low-income kids. We have the largest virtual school in the country, with something like 400,000 courses administered. The point I'm making is this fight has to be fought locally, but it's fought not because of policy, it's fought because of the beneficiaries of an open system. And in Florida, we have now rising student achievement as the norm. We were 50th in graduation rate in 1998. When I became governor, 50th. And now we're at the national average. Each and every year it got better. We were behind almost every state in almost every category. Today, Hispanic kids are 2 grade levels ahead of their counterparts in the United States. Today, learning disabled kids, based on the nation's report card, are the best in the country. Today, people in poverty are in the top 3, kids in poverty are in the top 3 in the country. And the net result is we have rising student achievement. And there are 240,000 more kids that are grade level readers than there were prior to the reforms. I tell you this because it's important to understand we've broken some things along the way here and we haven't fixed them. And in Washington, D.C., it requires the kind of leadership to get in and make it happen. Fix the things that will allow us to rise up again. But it's not just about winning the political battle. It's also about making sure that every person that is an American citizen has the chance to pursue their dreams as they see fit. And now, too many people don't. I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine who I've met in the last year. Her name is Denisha Merriweather. Denisha is from Jacksonville, Florida. When she was young, she had a family that had to move around because they were living in poverty, and that's what happens when you're in poverty. You move back and forth because you can't afford where you're staying, and it creates major disruption for young people, particularly in schools. This precious young woman was held back 2 grade levels because no one thought she could learn. She was disruptive in class. She was not happy. She was probably told subtly in all sorts of ways that happens in our society today that you can't make it. She got, because of her godmother, John L. Johns, she was informed of the corporate tax scholarship in Florida. And this godmother, this beautiful woman, said to Denisha, you got to go there. And so she went to a private school where there was order and discipline in her life, where she was told that she was smart. She wasn't told that she wasn't going to make it. She was encouraged along the way, and there was discipline in her life. And Denisha, instead of dropping another grade back, regained a grade during her high school experience. And she was the first in her immediate family to graduate from high school, and the first in her extended family to graduate from college. Think about that. Instead of being part of the problem, instead of being part of the underclass, instead of being a problem that many of us look at and say, oh, this is why our country isn't working, she's now going to live a productive life. And she might even be a Republican. I don't know. I haven't asked. But the simple fact is, giving people a chance to pursue their dreams, to rise up as they see fit, to be able to live productive lives the way they define it, if we're not on their side, whose side are we on? We need to be on the side of people that really, truly want to be able to live a life of purpose and meaning. And if we do that, not only will we win elections, we'll also govern to allow Jack and the next generation of children to be able to live an extraordinary life full of purpose and meaning, far better than the one we have today. That's worth fighting for, and that's why I appreciate the fact that you all are here as activists for the conservative cause. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy Memorial Day weekend.